you are thinking about that in advance and you're curating what's on your smorgasbord. So you know in advance that all of those methods or approaches will get you to that outcome. You're not having to think of something in the moment. And that's really important here, because when you're in the pits of, oh crap, I can't do this thing, then maybe you realise you made the barrier too high to getting started, or there's an emotion, like maybe you're doing something for a client and there's a bit of rejection sensitivity hanging around in your brain and you're like, oh God, what if they hate this thing that I'm doing? That curated smorgasbord of options is your fallback position. Previous you, whilst you were feeling calm and rational, thought all that through. You in a tiz in the moment just needs to pick one that seems achievable and go with it.
Welcome to the Unconventional Business Podcast, your place for real stories of real people growing their businesses in the real world. Most of us are neurodivergent in some way, but of course everyone is welcome. This is the place for rule breakers, narrative dismantlers, and those who just want to forge their own unique path in the world. You will find no do it my way or 6 steps to 6 figures and all that BS here. My guests and I will offer guidance that allows you to take just the bits you like and easily apply them to your business. And of course, to bin the rest if you like. After all, building a successful business, whatever success means to you, is about creating something with structure and flow, not something rigid that feels like wearing someone else's clothes. Join me on this journey and together, let's do business differently.
Hello and welcome to the smorgasbord. Today we are talking all about options. We're talking all about dopamine. We're talking all about avoiding all or nothing thinking, how to build consistent habits that maybe are not things that you do every day, but that we're still allowed to call them consistent. We're talking about banishing self-judgment and the inner critic, and how to get started on things, how to return to previous habits you've had, and how to let go of being really tied to one specific method or approach for achieving something, and really tune into the outcome that you want to create instead, which is, as I have found in my own life and with my clients, a much more effective approach, and one that has a lot more self-compassion built into it. So let's get into it. You have probably read things about having a dopamine menu, for example, building one of those for yourself. You've probably read things about how to be more consistent as an ADHDer. You've probably read things about how to hack your brain. I'd be really interested to know, actually, and it's always worth reflecting on how much of that works for you and how much doesn't, and how much of that serves you and how much doesn't. And have you ever considered that maybe it's not you that's the problem, it's the advice? A lot of my clients have a lot of internalized sort of neurotypical standards, societal conditioning, a lot of internalized ableism, if I'm honest. And there's a lot of this sense of like, I should be able to do things in the way that other people do them. And this is something I'm really passionate about cutting through and dismantling. Is actually really magic stuff starts to happen. You genuinely are able to change your life when you make friends with the brain that you've actually got. You understand how it works and you build things around it rather than expecting it to do things that it's just not wired to do. So ADHD brains have an interest-based nervous system, not an importance-based one. And that is really, 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 really important to remember in those moments when you're like, this thing's really important, why can't I do it? And that's where I like to just change the tone of that question. So I'll give you an example. I needed to book a smear test last year, and I sat with that piece of paper and I kept looking at it and I kept writing it on my list, call the doctor, make the appointment. And I just found it really hard to do. I don't like making phone calls. Yeah, it's weird. I spent my teens on the phone to my friends every night. And now like the idea of an unscheduled phone call that I have to make or that I receive is just horror, like pure horror, because I don't know what will be expected of me and I don't know how long the phone call will take and I don't know how the conversation will go, and the signal is dodgy in our house, so I don't know if the person will be able to hear me, and just insert all of the things here. So I knew it was important. People in my family have died from cancer. It's like, I know how important it is. It's literally mission critical for my life, and yet I still couldn't make that phone call. And so this is where I had that light bulb moment. You have an interest-based nervous system. You've got to push on a button that makes this interesting somehow. And I use my acronym here that I think I've mentioned in other podcasts, PANIC. So what motivates an ADHD brain? Pressure, either time or money, accountability, novelty, a really interesting challenge, or competition with yourself or others. So I posted about it on LinkedIn as an example. And as soon as I hit post, I had the accountability. I've said it out loud to some other humans or in written form, and I was able to make the phone call because it had clicked that switch in my brain. And that's what I mean about working with your brain, not against it. And that whole time I couldn't make that phone call, the really important thing I did was I didn't judge myself. I didn't beat myself up about it. I didn't tell myself that I was shit. I just knew that at some point I would be able to access what my brain needed, and I gave myself the space and time to do that, and I had the smear test and everything was fine. What I want to offer today is some real, tangible, practical examples of how to work with the brain you've got and build things around your brain, rather than keep forcing yourself to do things in the way you think you're supposed to do them, or you should do them, or other people do them, or why can't I just? It's like, why can't you just change the tone of that question? Why? Literally, why? Have that conversation with your brain. Okay, why don't you want to do this? Maybe you made the task too big. Maybe it feels overwhelming. Maybe the deadline is too far away. Maybe it's just not interesting. Have that conversation. Dig underneath the skin of that and ask why, and then figure out how you can make a different approach. And this is what I want to offer today. Is one of the things I talk about a lot in my coaching with ADHD business owners is the smorgasbord. And the reason I talk about the smorgasbord a lot is it's all about options. It's all about getting away from black and white thinking, all or nothing thinking, and exploring what else exists in the space between the two extremes. So let's take an example. You want to develop a new habit, like exercise, like going to the gym or going for a run, and you go, right, I'm going to do that 5 days a week, because that's quite an ADHD thing to say. Which is my question back to my clients in those moments is always, do we think that's realistic? All or nothing. We go all in, right? We're like, right, I'm going to go for a run 3 days a week, and I'm going to the gym 2 days a week, and I'm going to become this gym bunny person, super fit, whatever. I'm going to change my life. And you do that consistently for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and you feel like an absolute fucking superhero, and you're like, look at me doing the things. And then maybe you push yourself too far and you get a knee injury or something. And then you have, 4 or 5 days where you're out with an ice pack on your knee and you need to go to a physio, and then the whole thing goes in the bin and you never do any of it ever again. Or you want to get back to it, but it just feels like an absolute mountain, like you'll never be able to get back to that. And then you sit and stew, and your inner critic joins in and tells you that you're rubbish, and you just think, this is never going to work. So that's maybe one example. Another example could be, and I had a client that came with this one, was, okay, I want to feel more organised with my time, and I know what I'm doing every day, and I'm not missing meetings, and I know what the hell is going on, and I'll plan it out in a notebook really beautifully for a few weeks, and then I just won't touch that notebook again. Like, how can I stay consistent with that notebook? And I was like, okay, so what if you just expected that whatever approach you're taking, you'll only be able to do that, and it will only work for a given period of time? What then? And this person was like, never thought of that. I was like, okay, so what comes out of the wings? What have you got in your back pocket for when the notebook is not the thing anymore, for when the novelty has disappeared, or the dopamine's disappeared, or it's just become run-of-the-mill and boring because interest-based nervous system, if it's no longer interesting, of course you won't want to do it. So this person decided to buy a whiteboard so they could still have that action of, putting pen to paper, because it engages different, more creative parts of your brain than typing on a computer. No shade if you like to organise your time with like an app or Notion, like if that works for you, fantastic. But there is a lot to be said for physically planning things out with pen and paper or pen and whiteboard. And then they were like, oh, okay, Cool. So then they had 2 methods. And, if you wanted to add a third into there, you could get some big coloured A3 sheets of paper and big chunky markers or whatever, so that you could have a third option. Or you could use Post-its and stick them behind your computer on the wall. So options, it's all about having options. Another example is phone usage. I had a client and I have a lot of clients actually, who really want to renegotiate their relationship with their phone, but they find it really difficult. And they were like, I got this app blocker and that worked really well for a little while. But now, my brain knows what we're doing and it just dismisses the app blockers or the downtime or the limits that you can put on an Apple iPhone. And I was like, okay, so what then? When the app blocker or the time limits stop working, what can you use then? And then we figured out maybe they could leave their phone in another room, or maybe they could get one of those timed lockbox things, or maybe they could put their phone in grayscale mode because it's less interesting. Or maybe they could get a separate work phone, for example, and then they could switch that off. Options. It's all about options. It's all about expecting that whatever approach you choose is probably only going to work for a given period of time, and you will need something else. And this is why it's so important to get clear on the goal. So what underpins the smorgasbord approach is you have multiple methods that will achieve the same goal, so that when a method or approach loses its appeal or effectiveness, or your brain just goes, nah, I'm not doing that, you can switch to something else and you are still getting the outcome that you want to get. And I think this is the thing that ADHDers often don't realise about consistency, is it's not about a consistent method, it's about a consistent outcome. And this is why I really believe in setting goals based on how you want to feel, not what you're going to do. And I have another podcast episode about emotion-based goal setting, which I think I put out in January 2025, so you can listen to that. But yeah, really thinking about what is that outcome I'm trying to achieve here, and what selection of methods, what smorgasbord can I create that all of those things on the smorgasbord help me get to that outcome, and my brain is allowed to choose between those methods. But the thing is, you are thinking about that in advance and you're curating what's on your smorgasbord, so you know in advance that all of those methods or approaches will get you to that outcome. You're not having to think of something in the moment, and that's really important here, because when you're in the pits of, oh crap, I can't do this thing, then maybe you realise you made the barrier too high to getting started, or there's an emotion, like maybe you're doing something for a client and there's bit of rejection sensitivity hanging around in your brain and you're like, oh god, what if they hate this thing that I'm doing? That curated smorgasbord of options is your fallback position. Previous you, whilst you were feeling calm and rational, thought all that through. You in a tiz in the moment just needs to pick one that seems achievable and go with it. And you can have a smorgasbord, right, for starting difficult pieces of work. So maybe you have a motivational playlist that helps you. Maybe you have a business buddy that you voice note. Maybe you have someone you can body double with. Maybe you allow yourself to just make the first task, opening the document and looking at it for 5 minutes. So that on any given day, there are enough options there that at least one of them will work. That's the key here. I'll give you some other examples. Something that helps with transitions into work. So maybe you have a smorgasbord of different ways that you start your day. The consistency here is you are transitioning yourself into work, but letting go of the method and focusing on the outcome, you have different ways of allowing yourself to do that. So maybe you get some exercise in before you start. Maybe you spend 10 minutes with your chosen planner of choice, whether that's online or in a notebook, and you review what went well yesterday. So you start with a wins-based approach and then you think about what you're going to do today. Maybe you have a regular body doubling session with a business buddy you can drop into. Again, maybe you could have a motivational playlist of like your favourite tunes. Maybe it's about a slow, mindful 10 minutes with your cup of tea or coffee. Give yourself some options. Give yourself something that helps you transition into work mode, but you can switch it up on the day when your brain needs some novelty. So I'd love for you to think about how this could work in your life. And it's one of those things that the more you do it, the more you do it. So the more you begin to adopt a smorgasbord approach, the more you see that kind of thinking has so many benefits for your ability to do the things that you really want to do in life. And crucially, I think it's the answer to this whole, we know what we need to do, but we struggle to do it. Giving yourself curated options that you know work for you, I think it's not a silver bullet, but it's as close as you can get to answering that question. And the other thing to think about here is, what are you already doing that you could do more of? Like, I'm really passionate about taking a strengths-based approach. It's why I don't talk about overcoming challenges. It's not about overcoming challenges. When you work with your brain's wiring, when you build things around what already exists, your challenges just kind of dissolve. They go away. You don't need to hack your brain or build all this stuff to get you to do things based on neurotypical expectations. You just go, my brain works like this. It's like trying to run Windows software on a Mac computer. It just doesn't work. You need native Mac software to run on a Mac. And yes, you can hack Windows software so that it works on a Mac, but it just never works as well. Here are some things to think about. So what are like the 2 or 3 things that you would really like to feel better about, that you would really like to feel, I've got these things sorted, I know what works for me? Maybe it's managing your time. Maybe it's your exercise routine. Maybe it's your diet. Maybe it's staying on top of life admin. And think about the ideal, right? So in an ideal world, if I had this thing sorted, how would I feel about this thing? How would it slot into my life? How would it feel if that thing no longer felt challenging? Think about that ideal. What is that outcome that you're looking for? And then explore what methods could get you there. And this is also an opportunity to experiment. If you don't have the answer, it's okay. You don't need to have all this figured out right now, but you can approach that thing as an experiment. So out of the 2 or 3 things you'd like to look different, pick one that's like, either it feels easiest to start experimenting with, or you think it would have the most impact. And just go, right, what are 3 or 4 ways I could get myself there that my brain feels good about, that I get a good reaction from in my body? Or I don't know, but I'm willing to try. And then figure out how you're going to track this little experiment that you're going to do. So, right, I want to get better at managing my time. So I am going to buy myself a whiteboard. I'm going to buy myself a notebook. I'm going to buy myself some big A3 sheets of paper and some lovely coloured pens. And I'm going to keep them all in line of sight wherever it is that I work. And I'm just going to experiment. And maybe some Post-its. I do love a Post-it. And then once a week, I'm going to review what worked. What really worked for me this week? What helped me? What made me feel better? And then next week, how can I do more of that? And is there anything that really didn't work? And why didn't it work? Is it because some perfectionism leaked in? Is it because I didn't want to do it on the day? Is it because I made it feel too challenging? Like, is there anything you can tweak for next week that will help you? And this is not about beating yourself up, and this is not about saying, oh, I can't do this. I can't use a notebook, because that's just a story that you're telling yourself. Everyone can use a notebook. It's just that you might need to do it differently. Maybe you get, like I get dotted notebooks because I don't like lines. My brain does not want to write in lines. I like to write diagonally, upside down, draw funny doodles. Experiment with options, experiment with different approaches. Talk to people that you know, other business buddies, other ADHDers. Ask them what they do, and just see this as an experiment to figure out how you move forward with the brain that you've got. No one else's brain, no one else's expectations, or, you know, and this is really what it all comes down to, is there is no one size fits all. There is no silver bullet. There is no magic solution to being able to live happy ever after with an ADHD brain, but there is your solution. There are your answers. There is your way. And the way to get there is experimenting with a lot of self-compassion and grace and reflection and celebrating what did go well and not beating yourself up for what didn't. And being able to approach it with compassion and curiosity. And this also, by the way, really underpins how I work with my clients, is it's all about the smorgasbord approach. I will quite happily give you a curated selection of things that have worked for me or my clients, or things that I've learned about through all the stuff I read about ADHD. But it's for you to choose. It's for you to experiment. I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I'm also not here to give you a really massive, great big open-ended question that you don't know how to answer. And I will bridge the gap and say, here are some things that have worked for me or other people that you could try. And I will help you reflect on what it's like to try those. And especially when it comes to business, if there are some key principles that you need to know in order to do those experiments, I will also tell you about them. You know, there are just key principles in business. There's no way to get away from the fact that if you don't talk about your business to other people, they won't know it exists, and they won't find you, and they won't pay you cash money to do what you do. But how you talk about your business to other people is 100% up to you. You will need to be very specific about who it is you work with and how you help them. But how you get specific is up to you. It doesn't have to be traditional niching advice, where you niche by industry and inside leg measurement and, all the rest of it. So it really is about focusing on the outcome and getting really clear on the outcome and just letting go of the method. So I hope this has been a helpful exploration of when people say, work with your brain, not against it, like how you can actually do that. And if you decide to do a little experiment, or you take some action as a result of this, listening to this podcast episode, please email me and let me know, because I just love to hear from listeners what they take away from these episodes, what they put into practice and what they learn. Because if I can help just one other person with each of these episodes to make a change and to be able to see and do something differently, then it's worth my while standing in a very hot garden office in the sweltering heat, blabbing away to my microphone, because ultimately I just really want to help people to feel better and to make friends with their brains. So yes, thank you for listening. Please let me know what you took away from this, and I'll see you next time.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please do drop this podcast a rating or review. I'd be ever so grateful to reach more of those that need to hear it. So I'd also like to ask you a favour. Who do you know that would benefit from listening to this episode? Please hit share and send it to them too. Thanks so much for listening, and I can't wait to see you here next time. Let's do business differently.